Hey, Neighborhood Christian Center, good morning and welcome to NCC's March 2020 Missions Convention. Even though you're doing it online rather than in person, this is the work of the church that may be the most important that we ever do, focusing on how to impact the world with the gospel of Jesus Christ. This has been an emphasis and a focus of NCC since that opening service 39 years ago. I know that because I was there. Renee and I pioneered the church many years ago, and it was so impactful on our lives and gave us the opportunity to grow. And it was at NCC that we received our call to missions. You've been an awesome supporter of ours over the years since we left the church to go into world missions and continue to support us. So thank you so much. Just want to share with you a few projects I'm involved in. My primary partner in ministry is Global University, and my focus is developing solutions for what we call sensitive countries, restricted access countries, places where traditional ministry can't always take place from the perspective of missions. So I'll give you an example. I just got back from Nepal. Nepal is a place that has had increasingly restrictive laws regarding what the church can do and how they can communicate with people. And so we're talking with them, developing a project so we can train pastors in the villages throughout the country to prepare them for ministry in that part of the world. We're doing a similar project in Sri Lanka, and I was there just a couple of weeks ago. And it was so exciting to be a part of a graduation, a group of students that we've helped train. We deliver instruction on tablets connected to the internet. And these church planters that are developing ways to impact their communities, not only in the big cities like Colombo, but out in the villages throughout the country. They're having a tremendous impact, and it's so exciting to be a part of that and help to prepare them for the ministry God has called them to. One of the older projects I'm involved in is in Iran. Iran has got one of the worst histories in the world in terms of persecution of the church. There are no legal churches today in Iran. They've all been closed down by the Islamic government, and yet the church thrives in Iran. And I'm so thankful to be part of a project training pastors using secure methodology, which I, for obvious reasons, can't describe right now. But we've seen many, many leaders be trained and have incredibly effective ministry. And that's been a part of my focus for a number of years now. And then finally, let me mention Vietnam. I've been working in Vietnam almost 14 years now. And we've seen the project there go from just a handful of students to now we're training literally tens of thousands of leaders throughout the country, throughout many, many fellowships and denominations, and working with the Assemblies of God in Vietnam as well. So thank you for the help you give. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for caring about supporting the church in countries where they face restrictions, they face opposition, they face persecution, but they remain strong because you're praying for them and because Jesus is strengthening them through the Holy Spirit. Neighborhood, I want to congratulate you again on your concern, your love, your focus on missions, because reaching people with the gospel of Jesus Christ is the most important thing we do in this walk of discipleship with Jesus. I want to talk about that this morning and what it means to be really committed to the cause of Christ and the cause of God's mission around the world. Jesus talked a lot about discipleship, and one of the passages that has always impacted me is found in Luke chapter 14. Verses 28 through 33, and I'd like to read that for you. Jesus said this. He said, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and you're not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began and wasn't able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he's not able, he'll send a delegation while the other's still a long way away, and will ask for terms of peace. And then Jesus summed up these two stories with this phrase. He said, in the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. I spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and one of the gateway cities to other smaller countries is Bangkok, Thailand. And so I've spent some time in Bangkok over the last number of years. And in Bangkok, there's a building. It's actually a skyscraper. It's about 49 stories high. Someone began to build that skyscraper about 2 or 3 decades ago. They got the superstructure completed. They got the top story done. But there was an economic turndown, and they ran out of funds to complete the building, and it was never finished. That building still stands there today. It's abandoned. It's too big to do anything with, too costly to implode and bring down. But at the bottom of the tower, where there's a fence around the building and there are security guards around the building, if you slip a little bit of money to the security guards, I'm told, they'll let you go in. You can climb, you can explore, you can run to the top if you want. But the one thing you'll never see in that location is a finished building, a finished tower, because it was never finished, and it's become an item of ridicule and an example of starting something without counting the cost, without understanding what it will really take to finish it. I'd like to share a few principles of finishing what God has called us to do that I hope will help you to understand this cause of God's mission in the world. The first thing is that every goal, every dream, every vision depends on one thing, on finishing. Every day in my ministry, I work with people who face opposition. They face persecution, even martyrdom. One of the projects that I work with involves a number of countries in the Middle East. And while I can't identify the specific country, I want to share with you about a picture that I carry with me just as a reminder of the cost of discipleship for some people. It's a picture of a beautiful young Arab woman. She has such life on her face. She looks so happy and committed. She's walking out of her home, and just a beautiful face, a beautiful young woman, full of life. But this young woman was martyred because of her faith. She's a leader in one of the groups of training groups that we've helped to establish in that part of the world, and her family found out that she was involved in spreading the gospel, and they seized her, they took her, they dragged her up on top of a tall building, and they threw her off. It's a terrible story. She was martyred for her faith. She's not the first martyr that we've had associated with that project. She was number 35. She won't be the last. Following Jesus costs something, and sometimes it costs everything. I love to teach the book of Hebrews and have a number of times in countries overseas. And of course, everyone loves Hebrews 11, this incredible chapter of faith, of heroes of faith, men and women who stood strong, who walked with God, and in many cases they saw the results of that because they followed what He called them to do. But Hebrews 11 comes after 10 other chapters. And the message of every one of those chapters is one simple message: never give up. Never give up. Don't give up in what God has called you to. So we read about the heroes of chapter 11, but they're there for one purpose: to demonstrate to us the need to persist, to refuse to give up, to reject the temptation to go back. And that's the message of following Jesus, and it is the essential is in our task of spreading the gospel around the world, whether it's getting on our knees to pray for the cause of missions, or digging into our pockets to support the cause of missions, or going to serve cross-culturally or in another language. It's essential that we don't give up. Now, when I was pastor at Neighborhood Christian Center, one of the members then challenged me to start running. I had never really run in my life, and I needed some way to stay in shape. And so he said, "Come on, go run with me." And so I started to go running, and I kind of liked it. And so we ran some more and kind of liked it. And he said, let's do a road race. And so we entered into a race. It might have been a 5K. I don't remember now, but completed that. And then we did another one down in Astoria, Oregon. And that was kind of exciting. That was a bit longer. And then one day he said, "Let's do the marathon." And I said, "What do you mean, do the marathon?" He says, "Yeah, the Seattle Marathon. Let's run the Seattle Marathon." And I said, "Are you crazy? I can't run a marathon." He said, "Sure you can. We'll train. I'll help you. We'll work together. And by next fall, when they have the marathon, we'll run a marathon." And so we trained for the marathon. We worked and trained. And finally the day came. We went up to the Seattle Marathon. And I don't know the route now, but the route then was really an out and back. It was a big, long loop. And we showed up, and I was in pretty good shape, and started running the marathon. And went out 5 miles, felt good. 10 miles felt good. 15 miles felt good. Somewhere around 18 miles, I hit that proverbial wall, and I felt horrible. And I confess, I wanted to quit. I really wanted to quit, and I slowed down. I was just walking. I was barely shuffling, and I was looking around now. How do I quit? Because it was one big loop, and even if I declared myself quitting, how do I get back to the start? I'd still have to keep going. And so somebody came along and encouraged me, and so I started running again, and I learned a lesson. You can't quit if you're going to finish. And I finished that marathon. That lesson has stuck with me ever since, and that's the message of what God has called us to in our Christian life and our walk with Jesus, and in our effort to move forward the cause of missions around the world, to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. We cannot quit. The second principle that I want you to walk away with today is that every goal worth pursuing will lead to pain, to suffering and resistance, and then victory, because victory will come. What is it that God has called you to accomplish? Or what is God saying to you this morning at the beginning of this missions convention in terms of your commitment to prayer in terms of your faith promise, your commitment as God supplies to provide finances for missions. What are you willing to endure to see the finish line? I've worked in Cuba in recent years, and over many years, our churches, our students, our leaders in Cuba, they've been detained, they've been harassed, they've been threatened. A few years ago, the authorities came in and threatened to close down every Assemblies of God church in Cuba. But they didn't quit. They faced the challenge. And one day, one of our students got the idea of taking the gospel door to door to every single home in Cuba. Imagine the entire island of Cuba, every single home, knocking on the door and sharing the gospel. And so it was a massive effort. Many, many people worked together and came together to do this. They began the process and they completed it. And in that time, they reached this impossible goal of sharing the gospel with every home in the nation of Cuba. Impossible, but they did it. And during that time, over 1 million people prayed to receive Jesus as Lord and Savior. The final principle that I hope you can hold on to today is that final victory requires total commitment. A few years ago, I was walking through the Vincom Center in Saigon. Saigon, the largest city in Vietnam, in the south part of Vietnam. Vincom Center is a big complex, apartments, offices, but also a huge mall, several stories high. And I was just walking through, looking around, and came across a storefront in the windows, and they had a display in the store, and it was an athletic store, and it had a display for a company. You know the company, Adidas. It's a German athletic company, and it had this motto, this logo, blazoned across the window. It said, "All in or nothing." All in or nothing. And I stopped when I saw that. I thought, that's incredible. That's the message of following Jesus. That's what missions is all about. Are we all in? Because it's all in or nothing. And so I was walking by and I just stopped. And I turned back and I looked at that. And they had some other signs up, and it really caught my attention. All in or nothing. And then I saw it. They said, this is great, listen to this. They said, impossible is nothing. And I thought, yes, I can use this. This is what the Bible says. And then as I was thinking, I wonder what marketing firm came up with this. And then the next sign, and this is what really got my attention. The next sign said, it didn't say impossible is nothing. It said, nothing is impossible. And I thought, oh, come on, you're stealing from us. That's from Jesus. But of course, that is Jesus' message. It's his message for you and for me this morning. Nothing is impossible. God has called us to reach the world with the message of Jesus, with the gospel of forgiveness and grace and mercy. The gospel of the Jesus who gave himself on the cross, paid the penalty for our sins. So not only you and I, but anyone around the world can receive that message, believe in Jesus, and have eternal life, a rich, abundant life following him. That's the message that we proclaim. And it's not impossible. When Neighborhood Christian Center dreams of impacting the world It's not impossible. When you ask God to supply for you the means of supporting missions around the world, it's not impossible because Jesus said it. Nothing is impossible, and we can reach the world with this gospel, and we will reach the world with this gospel. That's the message of Jesus this morning as we begin the missions convention for Neighborhood Christian Center. All in or nothing. I want to finish with a story of a woman who passed away many, many years ago, but is increasingly significant to me. She's my great Aunt Catherine. Some of you knew my mother, and her name was Catherine. She was named after her aunt. Catherine was a missionary in the 1930s and into the 40s on the island of Sumatra in what was then the Dutch East Indies and now is known as Indonesia. She was there in the lead up to World War II and came back to the States for a short time and just believed that God wanted her to go back, and she did. She got back to the island of Sumatra 1939. She began ministry to a tribe, an unreached tribe in the jungle, and was at work doing that when World War II began. And of course, everybody knew at the time that Japan could never reach Indonesia, that Singapore would stop, even if they could invade Southeast Asia, if they could come down the Malay Peninsula, Singapore would keep them from going any further. But of course, Singapore fell overnight, and they came down into Indonesia, what is now Indonesia, the island of Sumatra. And my aunt, out in the jungle, she made her way to a place where she could be hidden and kept safe. And she was there when some men of another faith who hated her for her proclamation of the gospel came, and they were looking for her. And she knew that if she was caught, the people who were hiding her, who was a Swiss family, they were neutral in the war, but they would be implicated. And so as an act of self-sacrifice, she walked out of the jungle and surrendered herself to the Japanese military. And she became one of the first Americans interned in a Japanese concentration camp during the war. She was there why? She was there because of the gospel. She was there because she was committed to sharing Jesus with others, which she did in that concentration camp for many years. She talked about the suffering as the women and children in that camp began to lose weight more and more and more. They had no food to sustain them, very, very little food. Disease ran through the camp, malaria and dengue fever and dysentery and all kinds of things. She lived, and at the end of the war, she was 68 pounds, having gone through incredible suffering because of the cause of Jesus. She looked back on that years later, and she wrote about her experience in the camp and the things she learned and how she was able to grow closer and closer to Jesus in that time. And she said these words, and they follow me every day whenever I think about her. She said, if I had to go through it all over again to know Jesus the way I do now, I would gladly do it. We're in a time right now of suffering. The world is experiencing a pandemic, and we don't know the limits of it. You're suffering in simple ways because you can't come together as a church family. Others have your jobs are at risk because of things being shut down. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know who's in control, and we know our mission, and we know if we hold on, we can finish, and we can finish strong. And just as my aunt learned, no matter what we go through, we will come out stronger in the end of it. I want to conclude with this passage from 1 John. He says, "Dear friends, we are the children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we will be like him, for we shall see him as he is." Neighborhood, I just encourage you, stand strong. Don't give up. Don't turn back. Make an impact for Christ in the cause of missions. God bless you.